I hate that name. I cannot say Lenovo without screwing it up. I always have to pause when I go to say it, and every single time I screw it up. So the Legion Go, which is what this device is called, got officially announced today. But previously, everything that we've told you about before has all been because of rumors or leaks. Well, now we've got a lot of new information, both from the official website and from some YouTubers that have had some hands-on time with it. So let's talk about this thing. And first I want to talk about who is the audience for the Legion Go. And I feel like they are trying to market two groups of people at the same time, which I think is a really smart move. The first group of people that they're trying to market towards are people that are watching a video like this. People that like to know raw numbers and stuff like that. People who are very into the weeds on computer hardware. That's, by the way, not me. Like, I am not somebody who really loves that kind of stuff, but what I have realized over time doing this YouTube thing is that a lot of you who watch this show, you are into the weeds on that kind of stuff. It's forced me to learn more, which I really, really like. But there's always times that I get it wrong because I'm the other segment of the population that I feel like they're trying to convince with this thing. And that is the people who just want their tech to work. And, you know, they relate more to the names of things instead of the numbers behind things. Let me give you an example. Apple is really, really good at this particular process of like coming up with a name and slapping it on something and having that name at first mean a very specific number thing, but over time it's not as important to everyday vernacular of people who are talking about it. For instance, a Retina display. I don't remember the number because honestly, it's not important at this point. But when Apple first announced Retina displays, basically they were talking about hitting the pixels per inch that was equivalent to what you would see in a magazine. And before that, you could absolutely see the individual pixels when you were looking at your phone. And then you got a Retina display and you were like, oh, that's what it means to have a Retina display. And sure, the super hardcore tech nerds were always able to look at something and say, oh, well, this is this resolution and this is this resolution, and that's why it looks clearer. But to the average layman that doesn't care about that stuff, all they need is Retina display, and it makes sense to them. And I feel like Lenovo, I got it right, I feel like they're really trying to communicate with both of those segments of the population at the same time. And it's no more obvious than it is when they're talking about the screen right at the beginning on their website. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. The Legion Go brings Windows PC gaming power to a handheld mobile form factor powered by the AMD Ryzen Z1 series processors that bring games to life on its 8.8-inch Lenovo Pure Sight gaming display. Notice that in that sentence, they are not trying to tell anybody what the resolution is, because what they're trying to tell you is, hey, this is something new. It's not, but it's called Pure Sight display. That's something that's easily marketed towards people like me. And then later on, they're going to give you the numbers to explain why Pure Sight is a cool thing. Now, in this video, they also talk about the glasses and the headphones, but I'm going to save that stuff for another video. We might talk about them on the podcast next week, so, you know, tune in for that. But I want to stick to the handheld right now. And the vice president of Lenovo, who's in charge of the consumer business segment and intelligent devices group, this is what they had to say. With this in mind, we began designing the Lenovo Legion Go over 2 years ago in order to empower gamers around the world to game their way. Now, that's a very interesting thing, because I feel like this is something that maybe I've been wrong about this recently. I've said many times that it takes a really long time to make a product like this. And I've seen many comments in my YouTube channel where people are like, the Asus ROG Ally is clearly a reaction to the Steam Deck's success. And to those comments, I would usually reply, I don't think so. I think that they were probably two different sets of people that had similar ideas at the same time. I think that these are much more likely to be reactions to the Nintendo Switch than to the Steam Deck. But like the over 2 years statement here from Lenovo, I mean, the Steam Deck was announced in July of 2021. Here we are on September 1st of 2023. You rewind 2 years and add a couple of months. That is over 2 years ago. It seems like maybe the folks over at Lenovo saw what Valve was doing with the Steam Deck and said, you know what? There's a market there that we could probably get into. Now, it's not to say that I'm not wrong about this now and I was correct before. Who knows which bill is correct, but I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think that this recent onslaught of handheld gaming PCs is a response to the Steam Deck, or is it a response to the Nintendo Switch? I'm still partial to thinking that it's a response to the Nintendo Switch and not the Steam Deck, but I could probably be convinced otherwise, so convince me. All right, let's talk about the specs, most of which we already knew, but let's just make sure that we've got them confirmed here. We've got an 8.8-inch QHD plus 16:10 Lenovo PureSight gaming display. The QHD means it's Quad HD, or basically HD times 4. And then the plus indicates that it's not a 16:9 form factor or aspect ratio, it's a 16:10 aspect ratio instead. They also said that it has up to 500 nits of brightness. The 500 nits of brightness is roughly 100 nits brighter than the Steam Deck, and I think it's equivalent to the ROG Ally, although I believe that there's been some YouTubers that have looked at the Steam Deck and ROG Ally, and they've seen that while Valve says that the Steam Deck is only 400 nits, it actually scales just a little bit higher than that and is closer to 500. So it's something to keep in mind. I think that this will be about equivalent. Speaking of the screen, they say that the Lenovo Legion Go screen covers up to 97% of the DCI P3 color gamut. I don't know what that means, okay? But what I do know is that the Steam Deck is kind of a washed out screen when you compare it with the ROG Ally. And when you look up the color gamut numbers for the Steam Deck, that's given in sRGB. But when you look up the numbers for the ROG Ally, that's given in both the sRGB format and the, what's it called? DCI P3 color gamut. And the ROG Ally, I just Googled it, hits at 76.9 of the DCI P3 color space. So what does that mean? That means that this screen should be even better when it comes to color reproduction than the ROG Ally, which in my opinion leaves the Steam Deck in the dust. I still love the Steam Deck, and when I'm playing it and just looking at just that screen, I don't care about the color gamut. But when you set it down next to the ROG Ally, you're like, whoof, that screen is nowhere near as good as the ROG Ally screen, and this one is even better. Now let's continue with the screen and talk about the resolution. And I want to rewind a little bit. And when the ROG Ally first got announced, I said that the screen in that thing was overkill. So I'm imagining many of you are anticipating that I would say that this is overkill, but I don't think so. It could be overkill, but I understand why they went with the numbers that they did. All right, so first off, why don't I think it's overkill? I don't think it's overkill because it's a bigger screen. As you increase the size of the screen, if you don't increase the resolution, your pixels get bigger and things just don't look as good. So I totally get why they would go with a higher resolution screen. This is an 8.8-inch display. If we just look at the resolutions and the screen sizes of the big ones in this category, Steam Deck is 800p on a 7-inch screen. ROG Ally is 1080p on a 7-inch screen. So this is 1600p on an 8.8-inch screen. So as you make the screen bigger, it is important to make the resolution larger. So, is it overkill to go all the way up to 1600? I would say yes if it weren't for really good integer scaling. If you're playing a very demanding game, then you don't run the game at 1600p. You run it at 800p, and you use something like FSR in order to upscale it to 1600p so it looks really, really nice. And somebody might say, well, you know, why aren't you making that argument about the ROG Ally? Maybe I'm coming around on the idea that 1080p at that size is not overkill because, you know, you just run the game at 720p and then, but 720p isn't integer scaling for 1080p. You know what I mean? So if I want to run a game with integer scaling on the ROG Ally, I'd have to run it at 540p. In fact, this makes me wonder if the sweet spot for running games on the ROG Ally in order to preserve battery life would be to run them at 540p and use upscaling to get them to 1080p. Somebody who knows more about upscaling, please reply in the comments down below. I'm very curious if I'm right about that. Anyway, moving back to the Legion Go. The Legion Go, run your games at 800p, upscaled to 1600p. It's going to look fantastic. You're playing a game that's not super demanding, run your game at 1600p. It's going to look fantastic. Now, it is going to chew through battery, but let's talk about that battery. This does have a larger battery than the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck, both of which have what I believe is a 40 watt-hour battery. This one has a 49.2 watt-hour battery, which is roughly about 25, it's almost 25% bigger than those other two. And I wonder if that's enough to power this much larger screen and much higher resolution. I'm not sure. But I do think it's interesting what they have to say here. They say, all of this gaming power itself needs some serious power to run, and the Legion Go has volumes. With a 49.2 watt-hour capacity battery, gaming sessions can go longer without needing to recharge. Legion Go has support for super rapid charge. Again, they're leaning into that Apple naming convention stuff, allowing a battery to recharge up to 70% in just a half hour when gaming while plugged in. Now, I said recently on the episode of the NerdNest podcast that I never play my Steam Deck or my ROG Ally when they're plugged in, unless I'm playing my ROG Ally in my arcade cabinet. If you're curious about that, there's a video linked at the end of this. Boy, I don't know if that is faster than those two, but that's actually fairly impressive. Like, if my system is starting to like die off, oh no, I need to charge it, I can charge it up to 70% in a half hour while I'm gaming and while it's plugged in. That's impressive. That means that batteries, like the battery capacity, isn't nearly as important as how fast it charges. Now, I've seen some people say in the comments of my videos that rapid charging batteries is bad for them, and I'm sure that those people are probably right, but I'm assuming that the device is smart enough to figure out, you know, when is the best time to crank up how fast it charges and when it doesn't. So, for instance, my phone, if I wake up in the middle of the night and I look at it and it's been charging for 3 hours, like, you'd think it'd be full, right? But no, it doesn't charge all the way to 100% because it watches how you use the phone, and it knows that I don't get up until 5:30 in the morning or so, so it doesn't top it off until almost 5:30. It slowly charges it over time so that it's not sitting and charging at 100%. And then once it gets to 100%, it stops the charge and just kind of tries to maintain as well as it can. And it seems like that's what Lenovo is saying that the Legion Go can do. Oh, and this next sentence is absolutely awesome. It says the Legion Go includes a power bypass mode that protects the battery from extra degradation while also eliminating heat normally produced while charging. So basically, if you plug in, you can switch it over to, what they call it, the power bypass mode, and instead of charging it, you're just running your system right off the outlet. Your battery will stay right where it is, and you will play your game for as long as you want. And then when you're done playing, you turn it off, then it'll start charging your battery. This shows that Lenovo is taking battery health into consideration when working on something like this, which is super important for a handheld. Now, the Steam Deck has one fan. The ROG Ally has two fans. Now, the Steam Deck's fan is sitting somewhere around 50 dB, I believe, and it depends on which fan you have. The ROG Ally has two fans, and they are sitting somewhere at around 30 something dB, which you would think that two fans would be louder, but because neither of them has to work as hard, it means that they don't have to spin as fast, so they're not going to make as much noise. Now, there was an update to the ROG Ally that made the left fan louder because it was trying to solve an overheating problem. I don't know if those decibel readings are before that update or after that update, and I don't have the equipment here to test that stuff, but Lenovo is saying that this 79 blade fan, of course they call it a liquid crystal polymer 79 blade fan, more Apple-y stuff right there, and it says it keeps the device cool at less than 25 dB of fan noise in quiet mode. Okay, and also allows the device to reach a full 25 watts of TGP. I'm assuming TGP and TDP are the same thing here, in custom mode when every bit of power is needed to win while preventing thermal throttling during extended gaming sessions. Now, notice, they don't tell you what the dB rating is when you're in custom mode, and that's probably because you can change it, but it says 25 watts is the limit TDP in custom mode, and doesn't the ROG Ally go at 35 watts when you've got it plugged in? Interesting. Maybe they have some information there that says maybe you shouldn't be running it at 35 watts. Who knows? Let's move on and talk about the controls. I was right about how I thought that we would hold the controls. But it turns out a lot of people were right about that because it made a lot of sense. I'm not the only person that made that guess. Basically, you hold it with the rails of the right Joy-Con pointed away from you, and you set it down on the table. Now, in my video talking about this, I said, boy, how do you keep it, so that it's nice and flat on the table? Because, your mouse doesn't like to be at an angle. Well, it turns out they've got this cool little, almost like a hockey puck thing that comes with it that your controller sits in, which gives you a nice firm base of contact with the table in front of you. Now, I think that this is awesome, especially for people who love shooters, but I prefer to play games with controllers, so this isn't a big deal for me. However, the main reason I prefer controllers is because 12 years ago I broke my elbow, had to have surgery. I can't rotate my arm this way. It's just really, really painful to do that. In fact, I just had a new surgery the other day to take all the hardware out to try and make some of the pain go away. But the reason is that I don't play games like that on a mouse and keyboard has nothing to do with the mouse. It has to do with the keyboard. WASD on my left hand for extended periods of time is painful. And so even if I don't pick up a Legion Go, I hope that they will sell the left controller on its own, and I can pair that to my computer, hold it in my left hand, use my mouse in my right hand, and play games that way. That would be an absolute game changer for me. I am so excited about this thing. Something tells me that you're not going to be able to get the, what do they call them? The Legion True Strike left controller on its own. They're going to want to sell you the whole thing. Boy, oh boy. I think that they would sell a lot of left controllers if they gave it a shot. And I honestly, I bet you that now that I think about it, there's probably already controllers out there that do exactly what I'm talking about. I'm gonna have to do some research and look into this. If you guys know of some, let me know. Now, let's move on to pricing. When it was leaked, the price was $800 is what we had all heard. And that seemed fairly reasonable to me. And I assumed that was gonna be the Z1 chip price, but I was wrong about that. Well, first off, it's not $800, it's $700. So, okay, so $700 for the Z1 and $800 for the Z1 Extreme? Nope, we were wrong about that too. It's $700 for the Z1 Extreme chip one, and that is the one that comes with a 512 SSD. And are you ready for this? This is very compelling to me. If you want to get a terabyte SSD in it, it is only a $50 increase in price. So it goes from $699 up to $749.99. And that is, I feel like that is aggressively priced. So what are your thoughts on the Legion Go? Are you gonna pick one up? If so, which one? Or are you gonna stick with the handheld that you already have? Or are you sick of this handheld stuff and you just wanna play games on a regular PC or a laptop? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, you're probably gonna like this one right here. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, everybody.